All right, guys, we are back once again. Back for the COVID cabal. Back for the COVID cabal. I know we're late. As you can see, I am dressed accordingly for somebody who was out. I was in the city, so it was. Unfortunately, I severely underestimated the time that I would be there for. I assumed I would be leaving at 8, and I did not leave till well after 9. And the trip itself, the trains were all delayed, and then now the cat's out of the house. I got to find the cat. I was looking for try to get the cat back in. It's all sorts of drama, guys. But we're here, and we're gonna make this a short one because I know that we're late. What's up, my man Alan? ARVP, what's up? What's up? Let's see if we can get a few more on here. Retweet this on Twitter. Let's get the word out. Get the word out that the COVID cabal is going on. And yeah, we're not gonna go too crazy with it tonight, because I think we're gonna have so much stuff coming down the line. It seems like, man, stuff is happening so fast. Is it not happening so fast? I mean, holy crap. End of September is going to be a big month. I can't get myself comfortable here. Fuck. Trying to get myself comfortable. All right. Just got to get to 20, that magic number, and then we'll be rolling. What's going on with you guys? What's the word before we dive into it? Because this is obviously pretty big news today. I mean, what happened today was, or we could say last night, over the last 24 hours. Immense news. But yeah, there's two things fundamentally I want to talk about today. Two things fundamentally. And I'm all suited up for the COVID cabal. I think this might be is this my first COVID cabal in a suit? I think it might be. I don't recall. All right, let's just dive in. Let's just dive into it. So the two big pieces of news that I want to discuss was obviously the main piece of news. COVID cabal in suit triggers cognitive dissonance. That's right. Well, as you guys know, I'm actually cabal. So I just came back from one of my Illuminati meetings, and that's why I'm all suited up. So the big piece of news, and I think people need to really internalize how significant it is that Russia has now done two things in the last 24 hours. They are holding referendums in all 4 republics, or let's just say all 4 territories. So Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporozhye, Kherson, they are all holding referendums in the next few days, literally next week, this coming week. And in addition to that, Russia announced mobilization. Now, right now, it's a very small mobilization. It's a very small mobilization. 300,000 reservists basically are being mobilized, which is 1% of their manpower pool that they could call up. So let's talk about that for a second and what this means. One of the things that is totally lacking from the vast majority of Western commentary when it comes to Russia is the understanding that Russia is not some sort of rogue state, banana republic. You can call it totalitarian if you want to call it totalitarian. Totally understand if people want to call Russia totalitarian. They want to call it an autocracy. What I would really say it's a security state that operates to some extent like a mafia, but in the interest of its own people. Let's put it that way. Not saying it's the ideal government. Okay. But people Jeff, it's only 2 months out. 2 months out until drinking. We're almost there. We're almost there. But Russia is a very legalistic state. It's actually a very heavy bureaucracy, and Putin himself is extremely legalistic. He's extremely legalistic. So, and people in the West don't get this. They think first off that Putin makes all the decisions, and he just does whatever he wants, which is like not remotely close to reality. It's the Sivlaki, this group of powerful individuals in Russia, of which Putin is the head man of it, and they make decisions, and every decision has to be legally bound. Now, and everything has to go through the bureaucracy. So, what people don't understand is that why was Russia losing, quote unquote, this war? It wasn't losing the war, but why was it not making the crazy gains that people expected it should have based on its size? Because legally, Russia constrained itself under the framework of the special military operation, which precluded more than a certain number of troops being sent to the territory. So, Russia calling up, the first thing is that Russia setting these territories, saying that these territories are all going to have referendums to join the Russian Federation. This is huge because what happens is that when all of these territories inevitably join Russia, because the word on the ground is basically this: these territories all wanted to join Russia, but Russia's approach was to be like, oh, we're not, we're just here temporarily. We're here to help the Donbass republics gain their independence, and these other territories, we're just kind of occupying them right now. What happened with the withdrawal from Kharkov, which followed on the prior withdrawal at the very beginning of the war, but the withdrawal from Kharkov in particular freaked the fuck out of people in these territories, because remember, the people in these territories are ethnic Russian, and they overwhelmingly want to join Russia. And frankly, even if a lot of them were like not so excited about joining Russia before, Ukraine goes and does recriminations against the local population. Anybody who, there's whole accounts that are based on doxing every Ukrainian individual in the village, in the town, like this happened in Kharkov, for instance, in Izium and Balaclava. If, even grandmas who accepted food from Russians were considered to be collaborationists. So this, even though the Russians moved a good number of the people out of Kharkov, who were like, the most collaborationist people left, it was a really bad optics. It was a problem. We talked about this on prior shows. And so the people in the republics were like, these territories, Kherson, Zaporozhye as well, were like, what the fuck? Are you just going to leave us too? No. We demand to join Russia. Now, you could, honestly, I don't know if Russia planned this, because if they did, it would be a very Machiavellian move to get really vocal demands from parts of Ukraine to join Russia. At any rate, though, that is what has been happening. And so while the plans for the referenda were certainly in the works, it's unclear if that was sped up from where it was planned to be early November, whether they just sped it up right now. But here's the really crucial thing about it. When these republics inevitably vote to join Russian Federation, then these territories are legally Russia, which means that attacks of Ukraine on these territories are attacks on Russian territory. So what that means is that the special military operation no longer ceases to exist. It's over. Now what you have is a state of war between Russia and Ukraine, which means all bets are off. And Russia, of course, also made it quite clear that they view NATO as being essentially part and parcel to this war. It's not a proxy war anymore. it's a war against NATO. And if NATO sends long-range missiles, which they're going to do, that they're going to consider themselves to be essentially at war with NATO. Now, what are they going to do? Who knows? Are they going to strike decision-making centers in continental Europe? I think things could really accelerate quite quickly. I don't know if it's going to happen immediately, but let's just look at the time frame here for a second. You have 300,000 soldiers brought up. Now, these soldiers are mostly going to be in auxiliary role, like logistics, targeting, etc. I don't know if they are going to also have some in frontline duties, but if they're in frontline duties, they are certainly not going to be. They are certainly not going to be offensive frontline forces. They're going to be defensive ones to hold territory, secure territory. The main soldiers who are going to be doing the push are contract soldiers. And by the way, an interesting thing that Russia's equivalent of BlackRock, which I guess rebranded, but Wagner, PMC, private military contractor, they have been recruiting prisoners from Ukrainian prisons, like in Kherson and Zaporozhye, and basically giving them, they serve for 6 months as basically stormtroopers, storming positions that they will get their freedom. And apparently they are having success with this. About 1 out of every 10 prisoners are joining this PMC. It's almost kind of like dystopian. You have a private military contractor recruiting prisoners. It's like StarCraft, like the Marines in StarCraft were usually convicts put out there for the Zerglings. Yeah, probably best I don't live in Poland. But there's some interesting stuff with this I'll get to. So this means that the gloves are really going to come off. And we just saw in the last 24 hours, 800 either serve for 6 months or be shot on the spot. I wouldn't put it past them, to be honest. I wouldn't put it past them if some of these guys were on life sentences or even death sentences. I don't know. Oh no, he's got. I love that emoji. Yeah, I was a big StarCraft fan, but I sucked at it, honestly. I love the storyline. I love the concept, but I sucked at it. I wasn't really good at moving the mouse quickly. I didn't have that mouse control, that ability to multitask, because I was pretty shitty at. Like I didn't like playing multiplayer because I'd always get like torn up because I couldn't move stuff fast enough. But yeah. So what this means is that it's going to be total war pretty soon. And Russia brought 800 aircraft to the front lines. Now, I think we're going to see massive acceleration in the airstrikes, especially once the republics, and I think that the referenda are going on from the 23rd to 25th of September. So it's going to be pretty substantial. Now, 300,000 military analysts I've been following widely believe 300,000 mobilized, in addition to obviously the main army, is not sufficient to take all of Ukraine. It should be sufficient to hold the current territory and get to Odessa, but it's not going to be sufficient for the entire country. That's going to require 1 million men. And it's widely believed that this round of mobilization was just the first one so as not to scare the Russian public. They paced this stuff out there. People wanted Russia to mobilize. And I'm just going to make this comment. All right, because I think this is an important comment that applies to not simply Putin, but Trump, to a lot of the guys on, that we talk about in this war against the cabal, is that the average person is really, really retarded. I mean, the average person is retarded and hysterical and does not fundamentally grasp strategy and does not understand all the various pieces. So let me give an example of this. a lot of Russians, understandably, were super, super upset about, um, the Russian approach to date. That, oh, it was slow, it was indecisive, they should have mobilized earlier. But if you look at it now, you realize that actually, was that the right decision or not? It is it, the, how do I put this? If they had mobilized in February, they would not have had the popular support for it. They had to wait for the sanctions to for the West to overplay their hand and piss off the Russian public, so that then the Russian public was the one who was demanding mobilization. So you have all these like Russian nationalists who wanted this stuff to happen sooner. They wanted action to be taken in the Donbass sooner. But what happened? Is anybody here aware of what happened? I'm going to ask the chat. What happened just before Putin declared that they were going to do the referendums in these four regions? Does anybody know what happened literally like the day before it closed up? What ended? I'm going to give you guys a few seconds to post in the chat because I want to see who's paying attention to the news. It's very significant. And of course, the Western media, manipulated it or deceived the public. By the way, I was talking to a family member the other day about this stuff, and they were like, well, we don't get any of this information. Like, how is this, how is the Western public supposed to know this? And I was like, it's their responsibility to know this. This is, like, ignorance is a choice. And she was like, but there's no way that people could really find this stuff out. Realistically, people have jobs. And I was reading the Wall Street Journal, which is hardly the worst of the newspapers out there, just the other day, and I saw the reporting in it. And I was like, crap, she's right. I mean, there's no way the Western public, given the information they're receiving, has any clue whatsoever. Like, I was talking to a guy at dinner tonight, and he made some comment about how, like, the worst place in the world to be right now economically is Moscow. And I was like, that's not true. I told him, I was like, that is not true. and I went through and I broke it down, and he was a bit shocked, but he understood the logic. I had to use things like, unfortunately, it's not the case. But they're literally living in a completely fabricated reality where they think that people in Russia are like screwed economically. I'm like, dude, they've had inflation on, random objects. They've had some consumer price inflation for sure. They have a higher inflation rate, but not in food and fuel, not in any of the fundamentals. And it's declining. They actually have deflation right now. So anyway, point here being, none of you guys put it in the chat, so I'm just going to say it. You had the SCO meeting, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization meeting in Samarkand in Central Asia. And what happened at this meeting was that Iran joined the SCO, Turkey was brought on as an observer, Saudi Arabia as an observer, and China and Russia completed their initial trade targets. Pakistan, remember, this is the Pakistan that the U.S. government overthrew. Imran Khan, who was like the Trump of Pakistan, overthrew him and put in this stooge. And this stooge called Putin Your Excellency and was asking Putin if he could build a pipeline to Pakistan. I mean, this is supposed to be the deep state crony, schlobbing Putin's knob. And you have all this stuff going on, Modi and Putin, besties, super close relationship. And they take these like little random quotes about, Modi expressing his concern about the war. But let's like not be fucking retarded here, and let's understand what really happened. They had a meeting. Everybody agreed on moving forward with these multilateral, bilateral trade deals, starting to move trade into currencies, the currencies of the two partners. So it'll be, the ruble and the real. And they all basically said, yeah, we're not we understand why you have to do this stuff in Ukraine. Nobody objected. All these powerful countries, half the world's population, 40% of the world's GDP, they 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 just said, they basically were neutral, that they're not going to dispute Putin's moves. So you understand this. If the Russian nationalists, if they had gotten what they wanted, they would have had Putin go ahead and do this stuff without making sure internationally everything was locked up. But because he took this patient route, the international community, even if they personally agreed with Putin, they need their own diplomatic cover. So the fact that there's been multiple attempts at negotiations that Kiev, under the behest of NATO, pulled out of, all these countries understand that these people are crazy, there's no negotiating with them. And so this has been a huge diplomatic win for Putin. So he waited till he had full international economic ties set up, new financial system set up, tacit backing, non-opposition of all these other countries set up. And then he escalates the war. It is classic grand strategy. Brilliant, and by every stretch of the world. And I will add, it's very similar to what is going on with Trump. And this is the next thing I want to segue into. I know that we're a little worn out here. We're some worn out war dogs over here, right? How do I put this? We've been waiting a long time. Haven't had quite our satisfaction yet. People think we're crazy. But you know what? If we're crazy, then Trump's crazy. Because what has Trump been doing? What has Trump been doing? He's been doing a lot of speeches recently. And what has Trump been doing at these speeches? What the heck? Is my cat back here? Is he back here? Shepherd? Nah, he's not back here. Gotta get that cat back inside. No, I have a cat. No dog, just a cat. So what has Trump been doing? Well, first off, Trump's been taunting the deep state, trying to get them to arrest him. People are like, Trump's stupid. Why is Trump saying this stuff? Trump telling them, people to put him on the ballot in 2022, telling them to put him in office right now. Clear, for these individuals, clear bait to arrest him. Like, well, Trump's stupid, they're going to arrest him. You think Trump is so fucking dumb he doesn't realize that that they would try to arrest him? He's baiting them into doing it. And what else is Trump doing? What is Trump else doing? At each of these shows, he's constantly referencing Q. It's not even that subtle anymore. I mean, you now have people writing articles about Trump, in the cult of QAnon or whatever the fuck QAnon is. These constant references to Q. The theme song that he does there is called Where We Go One, Where We Go All. It's not even subtle. So, knowing all that, you have to come to the conclusion that either Trump is totally in the loony bin. He himself is hoping, he has no idea what's going on. He's in the dark too. And he's stupid because he's so delusional. He has no support. And he's trying to get himself arrested because he's stupid Trump. And what else is he? I mean, or like Trump actually believes the Q stuff. Like Trump actually believes it, or he's trolling us. And then you have to ask, well, why would he be trolling us? Oh, he's trying to bait us into revealing ourselves again. I guess you can kind of try to come up with these theories, but they don't really work. The only reason that he would be quoting this stuff at this juncture, this isn't like before 2020. I could understand some of these arguments before the 2020 election, where he was kind of like, we were being manipulated, a wink and a nod. At this point, I mean, Trump doing this stuff puts him very, very in a very, very vulnerable position. So he would only be doing that if he had some sort of card up his sleeve. I think that it's increasingly becoming the case that if you do not take Q seriously under, given Trump's actions, if you don't consider that, hey, maybe this is a possibility, and start to read through the tea leaves, look at these little subtle details like we've been looking at, I think that you are willfully ignorant, because it seems too fanciful to believe, even though tons of evidence is pointing towards it. It's the same stuff we talked about with Tom Luongo and the Fed. It's the same arguments. By the way, from what I've heard, Gitmo has just completed its evidence room, and I believe the courtroom, but I'm mixing some of this stuff up. They just finished a major section of Gitmo, and the rest of it should be completed by the end of October. This is that, $200 million geriatric hospital. Huge evidence rooms, docks that can hold FEMA ships. I mean, this is a huge expansion to Guantanamo Bay. Why are they expanding it? What are they doing with it? We're going to find out. But it's looking pretty wild, guys. It's looking pretty wild. I believe that, this is... here's the cat. He just ran right into the screen. Come back in here. Oh my God, cat. Look at this cat. He just ran in between the screen. He had a rough night there. A little spook going out there. He literally ran between the screen and the glass door. He ran to the screen, and then he ran again into it, and then tried to go through. Poor shepherd. Very stressful. Now he's hanging out. See, he's not tagged or anything, so we don't like him to stay out at night. We don't even really like him to get out at all. But he was a stray when we found him. He's got a little bit of the call of the wild in him. So he likes to get a little taste from time to time. Anyway, happy to answer some quick questions, but this is the first day of fall, last day of summer today. We're heading into it. It's coming. You can feel it coming. You can feel stuff starting to come to a head. We still got ways to go, guys. Let's not kid ourselves. I think this is going to go on until 2024, but we, in the meantime, we are about to see some of the overt action we're looking for. Because I got to tell you guys, I am, the public is very aware that stuff is wrong, but they are still fundamentally asleep. And I don't know what else to say about it. It's been a little bit shocking for me. We're going to need some stuff to go overt. Oh, by the way, last thing, and just to add, I don't know if you saw, but the flag did not have stars on it, which is apparently a marker of belligerent occupation. Now, I don't want to get too much into the flag stuff because people were kind of spurging out on, like, it doesn't have the gold trim. What does it mean? I don't really know that this stuff means anything, but I'll throw it out there. I have not ever seen a flag without stars on it. So, crazy stuff's coming. We had the market got shattered. It was at Trump's speech and Biden's pin. Both had flags that did not have stars on it. And that's supposed to be an indication of belligerent occupation. How's the election atmosphere in my state? I mean, I think everybody believes that the Republicans are going to win in the fall. Maybe I'm exaggerating that. I don't know. I don't talk to people about politics. I don't see any sort of hostile environment though. There's not a lot of division. I can tell you that much. If they're trying to like create lots of division, I don't really see it. Most people I hear from are moving quite in our direction. Thing that people are most asleep about is the war in Ukraine. People are pretty clueless about the war in Ukraine. But other than the war in Ukraine, people are like domestically, people get it. People are starting to get it for the most part. So I don't see any kind of hostility. I mean, we're still coming off the summer. October is the month to really watch with this. But yeah, I don't see any of that stuff. I don't see any of that stuff. What was I gonna say? But yeah, anyway. Oh, the markets, yeah. So the Fed raised another 75 basis points today. Um, Look, guys, next month, I think Q3 reporting. That's when we're gonna have the big wipeout. So, not financial advice, but really think about your investments. It dropped another 500 basis points today on the news of the Fed raising. The Fed's gonna keep raising. That's where it looks like it's going. Red October. Anyway, guys, my throat's getting kind of itchy for whatever reason, so I'm gonna get off, and we will check in soon. I'm sure it's not gonna be too long until we have to go in again. Stuff is really, really moving. That's interesting about the dinar, Jeff. I'm not super clued into that. How's Taiwan and China looking for October? That's a good question. I will answer that one before I go. I don't see it right now. I don't think enough has built up yet. It's definitely in the cards, but the question is, I don't think China's ready. That's the word I'm getting. That China's just not ready. All right, I got to answer some of these geopolitical questions. I'll do what I can with it. China's not quite ready to do it yet. I don't think they're quite ready to go to war. You know, there's still some dancing going on between the cabal and China publicly. So a lot of people are saying that conflict is not going to happen until 2027. I don't know what's going to occur with all this stuff. I don't know how it's going to play out. It's too murky. But I do see some sort of standoff, some sort of issue there. The way I would look at it is this. Yeah, Jeff, it's looking like it's going to pass the weather window. I mean, things could accelerate really fast all of a sudden. You never know. But it looks like, I don't see enough tension right now. Like what we talked about in August was predicated on this continuing to ramp up. And it just didn't. It's actually cooled down quite a bit. Will it ramp up again? Certainly possible. But I think that, the verdict from analysts is that China is just not ready for it, that people expect this conflict to happen later in the decade. We'll see. We'll see what the timing is. But I do think that there is going to be some action there, because the primary thing that I understand about this is that every single tool or weapon that they can use, they're going to use. Even if it's a dud, it's just kind of like, they're going to light every single like fireworks they have in their arsenal to try to make something happen. And a great example of this, we'll just say really quickly, is what's going on in Armenia, what's going on in Iran, what's going on in Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan. So, what's going on, I'll hit each of these, but they're all the same stuff. It's basically what the West does is they create NGOs in countries. The NGOs then, you know, I'm blanking on the name of one of the key ones, but something for blah blah blah, American values, democracy, national. I think it's what National Endowment for Democracy or some kind of bullshit like that. NIAID or something like that. Some kind of like, I don't remember the acronym, but you got these places all over the world, and they're a great way that the cabal launders money, but they're also a great way that the cabal is able to indoctrinate the intellectual class of these countries to become agitators. They're basically taught how to do color revolutions in countries. And so they have all these, like, the one thing you have to say about the cabal is their intelligence agency work. I mean, it just, their control over intelligence agencies is what gave them all this power. So they use these intelligence agencies to manipulate things in the countries. I mean, look, I will say this about Russia. I'm not saying, I understand why people don't like it, but Navalny, for instance, Navalny is very clearly bankrolled by the cabal. So you can say, like, well, Russia didn't play fair because they just took him and threw him in prison, or they assassinated some of these people. And no, it's not playing fair, but it is playing tough. It's maybe playing for keeps. They just decided that they weren't going to allow this, facade that the West would use to infiltrate government systems and capture them. So they just said, okay, we're going to assassinate people, we're going to arrest them, and that's just it. And, oh, you don't like it? You can call us totalitarian, but that's what we're doing. They don't do that so much to the same extent for people who are, it's not a matter of being in opposition. There's a lot of opposition parties in Russia that are not getting rounded up and arrested. It's the ones that are basically backed by Western intelligence agencies. Okay, so across all of the world, you have these, and they activate these cells to create trouble. And so you see this in Kazakhstan. That's what happened right before the Ukraine war. They tried to activate that. And Kazakhstan's an interesting case because Kazakhstan's 25% Russian. It used to be 50%. 25% Russian. Has no history of a state prior to the collapse of the Soviet Union. And northern Kazakhstan is predominantly ethnic Russian. So you have far northern and northeastern Kazakhstan is ethnically Russian predominantly. And northern Kazakhstan in general, if you want to take about half the country, northern half of the country, is often considered by, nationalists to be core Russian territory. So Kazakhstan is like a mini Ukraine. I expect that there will be something worked out there. What I see coming when this is all over is most of Ukraine being absorbed into Russia, Belarus being absorbed into Russia, and Kazakhstan or northern Kazakhstan being absorbed into Russia. I don't know the mechanism. I'm sure that there's some grand strategy with this to do it. But, especially the fact that Kazakhstan has been kind of playing both sides. Like they were funneling weapons to Ukraine through Bulgaria. Russia found out about it, shut it down. But now you have Kazakhstan talking about leaving the collective security, the CSTO organization with Russia. I mean, Kazakhstan isn't playing things really stupidly because they're still overall being kind of quiet, but you can tell that the government is trying to figure out how they can get away from Russia, and they really can't get away from Russia. So I think something's going to happen with that. I don't know what's going to happen with it. It's kind of a messy situation because, like, Ukraine is in many ways much more clear cut. you have them right on Europe's doorstep getting pulled into it. But Kazakhstan, in many ways, is more difficult because it's part of the CSTO. It actually has, it's more pulled in three directions. It's developing ties with China and, with resources. And you have this infiltration from the states that's destabilized the government. And of course, you have the Russian influence. So Kazakhstan's kind of fought over three different parties, but they can't go aggressively against Russia or China because they're in the same bloc. It's very complicated. I don't think it's going to get resolved immediately. But one of the things you can see is that once Russia's fully mobilized, and they're having all this success bringing Russian-speaking people back into the Russian fold, don't you think it's maybe not so unlikely that the Russians in North Kazakhstan are going to have a similar demand? And will it be in the national zeitgeist at that time in Russia to want to bring them in? And given at that point Russia being victorious in war against NATO, do you think Kazakhstan will be in much of a position to refuse? So this is one of the things that just to keep in mind. Years down the line, we're talking 2024 earliest. Now we have Iran. They made a big thing about that. Some hijab woman. I know it's a psyop. All these manufactured protests. I know it's a fucking psyop. I'm not saying there are people who are happy about the regime in Iran. I'm not saying that, but you can just tell this shit is orchestrated. It's apparent. So we'll see, but I mean, Iran is they're trying to do this flip in Iran for sure, Jeff, because that's what they're doing all over in all these countries. Iran has just signed an agreement a few weeks ago with Russia over its drones. Iran has a very, very advanced drone production. It's quite impressive, actually. And people laugh about it, but they're really high quality drones, including these suicide drones, the Shaheeds. And Russia actually has a very crappy drone production. Russia's strongest with artillery and anti-air. They're not very good with drones. They're very lag behind that quite a bit. And so they're licensing Iranian drones and they're using them to great effect in the war. Planes have been flying constantly from Iran to Russia with these drones. So Iran and Russia are very, very close. It'll be interesting to see if it flips. It'll be interesting to see if they manage that. That would be a huge coup for the deep state because Iran's alignment with Russia is so profound that it's actually making Iran and Saudi Arabia have a rapprochement because Saudi Arabia sees the writing on the wall and they want to work with they want to work with the BRICS. They want to work with the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, hence why they applied for observer status and eventual member status. Same thing with Erdogan. Erdogan's like within the West, but he's like, these guys are fucking retards. I got to get myself a way out of here, which he's doing. So all these countries are working together to varying degrees. I mean, Turkey's always got its own agenda. So then you come to Iran, then you come to Armenia and Azerbaijan. So Armenia and Azerbaijan have a dispute over this territory called Nagorno-Karabakh. It goes way back. Short story is that the region was part of the Azerbaijan Soviet Republic, but I think it had it was like an ASR, it was an autonomous Soviet Republic within it. Anyway, once the Soviet Union collapsed, the population in Nagorno-Karabakh in the mountains was all Armenian, and then you had the lower lands, there was more Azerbaijani. So basically the Azeris came in, they're Turkic people, they came to the area later, but as usually happens, they pushed the original people, the Armenians, to the mountains. Okay, so the Armenians in the early 90s invaded, took over the vast majority of the territory, but it was disputed. In 2020, the Azeris had beefed up their military. They struck back. Basically, almost completely cut off the Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh from the rest of Armenia proper. They left a little corridor, the Letak corridor. I forget the name of the city. It starts with an L. Russia basically brokered this ceasefire, and it's been a frozen conflict, as Russia likes to do. Now, important to understand that Armenia is Orthodox, and so inherently you would think it would have more alignment with Russia, more sympathy. Azerbaijan is a Turkic. Azeris are Turkic. They're Muslim. They are very closely aligned with Turkey. In fact, you could argue that they're puppets of Turkey in some way. Super heavy influence. Iran, interestingly enough, has traditionally been quite sympathetic to Armenia because they both have issues with Israel. It's a really messy diplomacy. However, Armenia is played its cards really stupidly, and because they've been seeking a lot of tech investment from the West, their leadership is very sympathetic to the cabal, to the Western powers. So they have been, it looks like they're being led up the garden path that they've been trying to look to the United States and France in particular, which is the main kind of European benefactor for aid. And look at the fucking geography. I mean, it's just absolutely retarded. Right now, and these people are telling them to leave the CSTO, leave Russia's orbit. It's really literally so stupid that Armenia is at risk. I don't think it's a high likelihood that it could go all this direction, but Armenia is at high risk it's at risk of losing its core territory, not simply Nagorno-Karabakh, because Azerbaijan has autonomous, they have an exclave, so the country's caught in two. There's a exclave called Nachivikan in the southwest, which is separated from the rest of Azerbaijan. I'm giving you guys a real geography lesson here. You can check a map. Azerbaijan wants to reconnect that. So you're now looking at a situation where Azerbaijan may take Armenian core territory, and it's possible that Armenia may just simply be taken out entirely. I mean, you'd think the Armenians would learn not to pick a fight with people all across them. Their only hope would be to align heavily with the Russians, and they haven't done that. Meanwhile, Azerbaijan's signing pipeline deals between Russia and Iran. So they're really just fucking up big time, and it's going to have big consequences. There's also similar issues. There were some border clashes between Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan. Seem to have been quieted down. Just about, these borders are all big messes. I mean, if you actually look at a map, some of these borders are ridiculous. Like, you have like a 10-mile area that's just completely separated from the rest. I mean, I guess it worked in the Soviet Union itself because you were all part of one big territory. So, if you had a region that was separated within another region, it's like, I suppose you could say that they were all voting together in the macro in concert, so it didn't matter. But once they became independent states, it's just been a huge mess. Anyway, guys, so this is, yeah, I mean, this is the kind of situation. And yeah, Jeff, I mean, they have had a history of genocide against them. So you would think that they would do everything they possibly could to align with the very big, scary Orthodox power in the area that would protect them. But they've done the opposite. Armenia is not as anti-Russian as Georgia, but oh yeah, by the way, it's another thing that Georgia's considering having a referendum to take back South Ossetia. But understand all this stuff. This is all being done because the intention is to distract Russia, to make it so that Russia can't focus on Ukraine, because if it focuses on Ukraine, it'll really smash it. So they're like, well, we're going to create fires all around you. Elsewhere, you have to put out these fires. That's their plan. And it's a good plan. I mean, these are good cards to play. But this is the reason why I think you are going to see conflict erupt all over the world, because the deep state will literally use every asset that they have, because this is a battle for life and death. You know, they're not holding these cards more than the next year or so. They're all going to get played. So, anyway, guys, appreciate it. This is some interesting stuff, by the way, Jeff, about Iran with dealing with the internet Bluetooth instead of wireless providers. But yep, we'll talk soon, my friends. We'll see you next time.